Wholesale Nation. I'm Andre King.
And I'm Andy Speed.
And welcome to the Wholesale Nation podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, this is the podcast where we teach you everything you need to know about wholesaling, along with interviewing special guests from across the nation. As a matter of fact, we have a special guest on today with us, Andy, all the way from San Antonio, Texas. Am I right about that?
That's correct.
Perfect. And we got Mr. Dan Diaz from San Antonio, Texas. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Oh, man, it's an honor to be here. Honor's all mine. I'm super excited to be here on the show. And Andy, thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I've followed some of I joined your group about a year ago, is it roughly? And there's a lot of great information there. You sent me the information on your course. I sent it over to Andre yesterday. Mm-hmm. I see that we missed a big group gathering of owner finance people. I believe some Houstonians were there. So definitely want to get you on because everybody thinks of wholesaling as the first step into real estate investing. And in some sense, they're correct. If you don't have adequate funding, et cetera, then wholesaling is obviously the natural option. But what you specialize in is owner finance. So you'll hear a lot of people talk about monetizing leads, and this is for the audience. I think it would be great to hear an owner finance specialist, and let's talk about the options, because it's not just buy low, sell high. Let's look at some of the monetization opportunities that we have as wholesalers, doing our marketing. So Dancito, or Dan, sorry, you want to, if anybody's looking for you on social media, it's Dancito. Right. But anyways, tell us about yourself.
Sure. So a little bit about myself. My name is Dan, last name Diaz, social media, Dancito. It's an old college name that kind of stuck with me. A little bit about my background, by way of introduction. I began my real estate investing career in November of 2015. My first deal was phenomenal. However, there were a lot of mistakes. I say it was phenomenal because I did generate an $80,000 upfront profit in the form of a down payment and a $400 monthly spread. And that's going to be for the next 30 years because, as a matter of fact, one of the conditions the seller gave me, she was very adamant. Dan, you're not going to make me refinance, right? No, ma'am. I will not make you refinance ever. No balloons, no prepayment penalties if you do choose to refinance. But privacy, she was moving from a state up north, was big for her. So we set her up with a land trust, and now it's a fully private situation for her. I say I made a lot of mistakes because I didn't know what to look for. Let me share with you one of the biggest mistakes that I made. We were literally at the closing table with my attorney, and he kind of does a few interview questions, and he says, all right, Dan, looks like you got all your paperwork. You did everything that you said. Just a quick question. What's the interest rate that you're owner financing? And I'm like, what's that? And he's like, yeah, what are you, what interest rate did you negotiate or did you agree on? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, what do you mean you don't know? And I'm like, look, this is the deal. And you know it. There was a lady that came into my office. I used to be general manager for Palm Harbor Homes, mobile and manufactured homes. She came into my office. She had a story. Her husband had passed away. She couldn't make her payments. And more importantly, she didn't want the property because it was her husband's decision to move there to retire. So she, he passed away and she couldn't do the payments. Little did I know that was called subject to property acquisition. All I knew was like, well, if you give me the deed, I'll make the payments for you. Right. She's like, well, if you make the payments for me, I'll give you the deed. Awesome. So all I knew is that the payments were $1,200, and I had agreed with the new buyer $1,600. No, sorry, it was $1,400. It was $1,200 and $1,600. So there was a $400 monthly spread. Mm-hmm. So I told the attorney, I'm like, we didn't really talk about interest. I just know I want to make $400 more, and she knows I'm going to make $400 more per month, and she's okay with it. And he's like, well, let's calculate it. I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's what I pay you for. And he's like, no, that's not what you pay me for. But let's calculate.
I'll do it anyway.
Yeah, no, I said this was a big mistake because when I purchased a subject to, the previous seller, they had credit. So the underlying interest rate was about a 3.9%. So when we did the math, I ended up owner financing it at 6.2%. which, by the way, that is a stupidly low interest rate. That is not an interest rate that you want, but I didn't know any better. All I knew is that I was getting $400 more per month.
Right.
So we did the math, and he says, looks like it's 6.2%. You happy with it? I'm like, sure, I don't care what it is. It's still my 400, right? I'm still getting my 400. He's like, yes, that's what you're getting. Okay. So, but it's funny because when we did the paperwork, I hadn't talked to the lady about the interest rate. So when she saw it, she says, oh, wow, you gave me 6.2. That's real nice. I appreciate it. I can't get anything under 8 back home. I'm like, God. Anyways, that was one of the biggest mistakes, that I made. I will never make that mistake again. But the reason I'm bringing up that whole story is what launched my career and what allowed me the freedom to quit where I was working was taking massive, even if imperfect, action. Taking massive, even imperfect action. So for those in the audience, I know that making seller finance offers may be daunting because it's terms that you don't know, but go back to when you were doing wholesale offers, cash offers. Go back to when you were talking to sellers. Go back to when you were making appointments. Go back mentally to when you were driving for dollars and dialing for dollars. All of that was new, and you overcome it.
Right.
So if you educate yourself a little bit, hopefully a little more than me, and you just take massive, imperfect, even if imperfect action, you're gonna succeed.
Yeah.
And,
that's absolutely great advice, and we can end now. I think that was phenomenal. You're absolutely correct.
Right.
I mean, you've got to take those steps. The action is the most important piece. You're going to learn along as you go. Like we've been doing this. I've been doing this almost 6 years. You're almost at 6 years,
right?
And I still don't know everything. I mean, I still learn. We still come across stuff all the time that we've never experienced. You've got to fail forward, and that's amazing that you failed so much on that deal. I won't say you failed. There was so much opportunity for improvement, and yet you still made $80K and $400 a month. So this note's still going strong today.
Oh, absolutely. And I learned a lot about it. It's still going strong. It'll continue to go strong. Because one of her things is she wanted to make sure that I wouldn't force her, to refinance. I know I'm married to that note because it's a mobile home on 10 acres in Elmendorf, Texas. And I know you probably don't know Elmendorf, Texas, but that's not where you want to be living. Love my people in Elmendorf, but that's not exactly, prime real estate.
Right.
But
and let me ask you, because I know our audience is going to be asking this. So, because you went from, like, for most of our audience that's wholesaling, and you said that you started creating notes. It's like, well, how did you jump to that? So were you taking a course? What made you decide to get into doing a seller finance deal like that?
So there's two things, and I want to talk about both of them if I can. One was somewhat coincidental and circumstantial, but the second one I'm very proud of because that's something that anyone can do. The first one, I was general manager at Palm Harbor Homes. And as general manager for mobile home company, I kind of got the backdoor approach to the profitability in real estate, in mobile home, and wheel estate, like I like to call it. So a few things really connected with me. One of them was when I learned that almost 40% of Warren Buffett's wealth was and is being built on the backs of the mobile home industry. He owns Clayton Homes, which is the number 2 builder in the country of mobile and manufactured homes. He owns 21st Mortgage, which is the financier to about 80% of mobile home deals in the country. And he owns Yes Communities and Sun Communities, which together across the country have about 65% of all of the mobile home lots where mobile homes are being placed at. So he owns the factory, he owns the distribution, he owns the finance company, and he owns the land where they're being placed. Very little people are aware of that.
Right.
I got to learn that, through my exposure with the mobile home industry. So that's kind of the coincidental part. But the second thing is I started reading, I started educating, I started doing what a lot of the audience is doing, going to YouTube, trying to talk to people, real shy, real timid, just kind of reading, absorbing. And I met this one guy, which I am eternally grateful for. I'll give him a shout out. His name is Ben Sanchez. He is no longer a wholesaler. He owns a CBD store in New Braunfels, Texas. First CBD store in New Braunfels, Texas, by the way. And totally different plug. But he was wholesaling at the time. And I found him because he called the store and he wanted information. He had a mobile home under contract and wanted a little bit more information on, you know, how mobile home world works. So we started talking back and forth, and I said, I want to get involved in whatever you're doing, because I could tell that he was doing something beyond that, and it was him and his wife, and they were real connected. And he says, all right. He says, I don't mentor, I don't teach. I'm not a guru, but if you want to learn, your first task is, I know you guys use bandit signs, which is true. Mobile home dealerships have bandit signs. I want you to write on one bandit sign, I buy houses. I want you to put your phone number on it. And I want you to do that 100 times. And when you put them all over the city of Elmendorf, call me back. And I said, okay. Well, little did he know that as a manager, I just told everyone, hey guys, we're doing different bandit signs this week. We're doing I buy homes, we're putting my number, and you guys are gonna go do them. So I call him back in 2 days and I'm like, hey Ben, I got it. Now what? And he's like, what do you mean? It was only 2 days. You already did 100 bandit signs? I said, yeah. And he's like, I don't believe you. And I'm like, well, come to the office and let's do a road trip and I'll show you every single bandit sign that I put up. And he came to the office, we had lunch, took him in the car, and I said, see that bandit sign? That one's mine. Moving a mile down the road. You see that bandit sign? That one's mine. Moving a mile down the road. You see that bandit sign? That one's mine. I showed him about 20, and he's like, bro, okay, I get it. You did bandit sign. I'm like, yeah, and my phone is ringing off the hook. So how do I make it stop, and what do I do? And he's like, you haven't answered any call? I'm like, no, I don't know what to say. So he's like, okay, well, let's take a look at the log of calls. So the reason I'm sharing that is, again, massive imperfect action. I found someone that I knew was where I wanted to be. That was the number one thing. And two, I trusted him enough to be coachable, teachable, trainable. And although I did not understand the whole bandit sign situation, I said, if he tells me to put 100 bandit signs, I'm going to do 100 bandit signs. What's the worst that can happen?
Right.
And because of that, we became very good friends. We became associates. He kind of helped me through the process of learning wholesale. I did 2 wholesale transactions with him, and then I started educating myself a little bit. I didn't like wholesaling. I was like, man, you only get paid once. This kind of sucks. So I kind of started getting myself educated a little bit more about owner financing, seller financing, and how to actually buy properties. I didn't have a problem with the income. I walked away from a 6-figure job that when I left, it had a number 3 as the first digit. Very profitable. And I didn't want income per se. I wanted residual, I wanted wealth, and I knew that it would be in seller financing and in actually buying real estate. That to me was super important.
So at that point, did you just take the leap and go full time, or did you kind of moonlight for a while?
Good question. So I gave myself a litmus test, and that's the second thing that I wanted to talk about for the audience. I gave myself a litmus test where I said, if I can do this once, if I can do it, then that is my proof that 1, it can be done, and 2, I can do it. All I got to do is replicate it. And to me, that one thing was, how can I buy a property and how can I resell it for more? I didn't know that that was called owner financing. So I set my mind right, and I was looking for opportunities. When that lady came into the store, I get it, that was a little coincidental, but it wasn't coincidental that my mind was now open to opportunities. Right. And when she kind of said, hey, I can't really, I don't want this property, it doesn't have equity anymore. She had just bought it 2 years ago. There was no equity on it. I said, well, it just sounds to me like the problem is the mortgage payment. And I said, yeah, straight up. My offer is, will you give me the deed if I make the payments in your behalf? Like, there was no complication. There was no underwriting. There was no diddle daddle. It was just the offer. Will you give me the deed if I take this problem away from you? So my mindset was in that situation. Now, to answer your question, my litmus test was, okay, I bought it. If I can sell it for $400 more per month, that was my goal. If I can sell it for $400 more per month, and if I can get $100,000 down payment, that was my big, hairy, audacious goal. If I can get a $100,000 down payment, then I will quit that day. That was my personal litmus test. Now, little did I know that it actually kind of hurt me to do that test, because when I did it, I'm like, oh man, every deal is going to be just like this. No, not every deal has a $100,000 down payment. But that was my test. It did take me 9 months to fructify that test. I was making payments for 9 months. I found out that my big, hairy, audacious goal was not as easily achievable. I had to market the home in different environments. I had to get creative on how I found the right buyer. And I was about to lose the deal 7 days before closing due to a wonderful real estate agent that I met. But the deal was salvaged, and we went ahead and closed on it. When we closed on it, I put in my 2 weeks notice, and I said, this is my litmus test. I can do this. Mm-hmm. This is doable. And now I just got to focus on how to repeat it.
Perfect. So let's talk about your business now, what it looks like, and then we'll talk about, how wholesalers can get this implemented in their business, and maybe not change much in the beginning, but how they can start keeping these properties versus just taking cash and walking away from tons of cash later on.
Yeah. So now most of the business, full disclosure, it's something that's probably not most can do. We raise private capital and we fund owner finance transactions. So if somebody needs owner financing, right now we're raising anywhere between 900,000 and 1.2 every 4 weeks, every 28-day cycles. So if somebody needs owner financing, they come to us, we approve them as an owner finance buyer. Once we approve them, very similar to a mortgage company, we let them pick any home off the MLS. That's not something that the average person can do. That's one side of the business that we do. It's probably about 40-50% of the business. The other half is we actively purchase with cash and with seller financing. Now, what I want to talk to the audience about is the fact that we're still closing 2 to 3 deals on seller financing. What's beautiful about seller financing is, one, you actually get to buy based upon your pocket. So if you really don't have money for a down payment, negotiate no down payment. If you really don't have money to float the monthly payments while you get an end buyer, negotiate no monthly payments. It's called the delayed first payment. You can negotiate it according to your pocket, whatever your pocket is, not with the mentality of assigning it, which if you want to assign it, by the way, I'll take it. But with the idea of how can Dan actually buy based upon Dan's pocket. Mm-hmm. And that's super beautiful, because the second thing that opening up your mind to seller financing does is now you can start dealing in vacant land. You can start dealing in ranches. You can start dealing in small commercial assets. You can start dealing in strip malls. You can start dealing in apartment complexes, big or small. You can start dealing in all sorts of areas that you probably couldn't deal with before, because there aren't that many cash buyers for all of those assets.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I love that. So I said a little while ago, we closed about 2 or 3 deals on a monthly basis on seller financing. Most of them are not homes. It's a lot of land, a lot of vacant land, a lot of big acreage, a lot of small commercial assets, your duplexes, your triplexes, that kind of thing. Sometimes it is homes. Right. And that's kind of what we do.
So as you had the model of you're finding the buyer, then they go pick out their house, you're funding it. That's great. Is that out of necessity? Is it kind of like when you go pick a house and then you got to go find a buyer, you just kind of pigeonholing yourself, or is it another way to approach it where you're looking for money and people?
Yeah, it was a natural evolution for us.
Okay.
And the natural evolution was in 2016, I had already quit. We started buying houses. And I kind of noticed 2 things. One, there was kind of a natural limit to how many homes in inventory I could have before I could buy any homes to add to the inventory. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was about 4 or 5 homes. I couldn't really manage having more than 4 or 5 homes in inventory without getting a buyer. However, in our marketing, we would get these phenomenal buyers. And I'm like, man, I wish I had the home for you. Because you've got the down payment, you've got the ability to make payments, you look, great from a financial perspective. I'd love to have you as a client, but I don't have your house because you're wanting a $300,000 home, because you're wanting a home on the north side, because you're wanting a 4-bedroom home, because you're wanting a 2 stories, because you want it new, because you want it in this school district or that school district. I don't have your home, but I want you as a buyer. So that kind of started processing in around 2018 when I went through all of the leads that we couldn't really take care of because I didn't have the homes in inventory. I'm like, there's a possibility here for more. And then around that time, started getting acquainted with what self-directed IRAs are, with how IRA money works, how people in their retirement years are looking for something a little bit more stable and predictable to put their money in. So we started putting the 3 together. The retired folks that have all the money in the world, that want to put it in something a little bit more predictable, the owner finance, higher end leads, so to speak, and the inventory, which was on the MLS. So that model's phenomenal for us. Our average deal is about $320,000, which for owner financing is kind of unheard of. Most owner finance investors stick to the 100, 125, 150, 175 range. We're owner financing at 9 and 10%. We're creating great notes, QM mortgages, full RMLO, third-party note servicing, and we're able to deploy our capital in San Antonio, Austin, DFW, and Houston. We're closing about 4, 5, 6 deals of those a month.
Okay. Man, that's great. I've grown to really love that business model. We've got a partner that we're buying whole properties with. That's his model, and it's a phenomenal opportunity. Of course, we look at it, and my first thought is, man, do I really want to owner finance this house because the appreciation's going up? But
yeah.
So for the average wholesaler, you have a wholesale operation, or you're training your team, you have a team. So what would I say to my acquisition guys as far as what to look for opportunities in seller financing?
Great question. So the first thing is to listen. Listen if the lead may qualify for a seller finance offer. There's 2 varieties, I think, of seller financing. One, where the seller is actually financing. The property has to be either free and clear, or there has to be more than 50% equity in the property. Mm-hmm. Option number 2 is subject to property acquisition, where they're basically providing their existing financing for you to buy it. Mm-hmm. So the first thing when it comes to acquisition people and wholesalers is just kind of listen. What box are you likely to qualify for? Right. Do you have a lot of equity? If you don't have a lot of equity, do you have a mortgage? Are you behind on that mortgage? What is your real need situation? The second thing is when I make my offers, in simple terms. I don't know if you remember that first deal that I did. I just said, hey man, will you give me the deed if I make the payments on your behalf? Like the offer, the entire offer was 1 sentence. And it was simple to understand, nothing complicated. I didn't say, are you open to owner financing? Are you open to seller financing? How do you feel, about me acquiring your property subject to the existing? No, hell no. They don't know that.
They don't know what that means.
That sounds scary.
Will you give me the deed if I make the payments? That was the offer. Will you give me the deed if I make the payments? So our cash offers, I always say, hey, listen, Mr. Seller, is it okay if we do a little role play? I mean,
sure.
You think that
sure, absolutely.
You guys are the sellers. Sellers. I'm the acquisition guy, and we're just going to do a little role play. Listen, Mr. Seller, you probably don't know this, but when I take my money out of the bank, in the bank, it's giving me a 5-to-1 advance. So for every $100,000 that I have in the bank, it's giving me a 5-to-1 bang for my money. I can leverage it at the bank 5-to-1. So if you're going to ask me to take that money away, however much money that is, and give it to you, I know you're not going to give me a 5-to-1 bang for my buck. I get that. But at the very least, I do need a 2-to-1 bang. It needs to give me a 2-to-1. Now, what that means for you is if you really want to force me to give you cash today, I'm going to need the property half off. Now, you and I are no different. It's like when you go to Target or H-E-B or Albertsons or whatever store you have, if you see something that you don't really need, But if it's half off, you might at least take a look at it. So I'm just going to level with you. If the only way we can do the deal is on cash, I'm going to need it half off. Does that sound fair? Now, I don't think you have to agree to it, but I mean, does that logic sound fair? Does that make sense to you, Mr. Seller?
Yeah, it absolutely sounds fair.
Mhm.
Now, you might not have to agree to it, but just kind of be aware that if you really absolutely want the cash, I'm going to have to buy it half off. You and I are no different. We only buy things that we don't really need if they're cheap. Now, I want to present to you a little bit of a different option that'll allow you to get a little bit more money. And basically, instead of accepting cash, you accept terms. Now, you probably don't know what terms are, but basically, instead of me giving you all the cash right now, you allow me to pay you over time. This guarantees you monthly payments over the next 10, 15, 20 years, depending on how we structure it. But the best part is that I no longer needed half off. I can go ahead and pay you full fair market value. Does that sound like a conversation you'd like to hear a little bit more about, Mr. Seller?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. So real simple terms. I try to use the word fair at least 20 times in the negotiation.
Mhm.
Does this sound fair? Am I treating you fair? Mr. Seller, if at any point in the conversation you feel like I'm not being fair, you need to let me know. Every single question, does that sound fair? Is that fair to you? And establish really the sense of fairness throughout. My goal, if I cannot buy the deal, and most of the times I can't because I'm cheap, is I want them to feel that I treated them fairly and with respect, because believe it or not, I've gotten deals back because they've told me that they feel better dealing with me, that I treated them fairly and with respect. So when I'm telling you I need to buy the property half off or at half price, I'm letting you know, you and I are no different. If you don't need something, with all due respect, I don't need your house. You know, I want it, but the only reason that's going to make me want to pull the trigger on something that I don't necessarily need, I don't need shade and shelter. I already got my own home, is if it's half off. So if you really want the money now, just be aware you're going to have to sell it half off, and that sucks. But that option is there. So I've already kind of cemented that if at any point in the negotiation you don't like the terms and you want to go back to cash, no problem.
Right.
It's going to be half off. And again, the foundation of basic terms, people get half off. They don't understand 50% of ARV minus repair. They don't know what the hell that is.
Yeah, right.
But they know half off.
Right.
So what is the seller avatar? Somebody that's willing to owner finance. What does that person look like? Are they somebody that likes cash flow?
So I found that there's two kinds of people. One, the people who don't really need to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they inherited the property, maybe it's an old property, but their ego does not want to be hurt by a low cash offer, by giving it away.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one type of sellers that works really well, because on paper, I'm buying it at full fair market value. They're not having to discount it, and they get all the bells and whistles of dealing with an investor.
Right. And is that a term that you look for then? Like the person that says, well, I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of see it in the conversation. They're like, I'm not in a rush. I'm not looking to give it away. It's not really a burden. The property taxes are paid, you know. If it's vacant, but like the grass is mowed, you know, and things are up, there's a little bit of pride of ownership. And I let them know, hey, listen, I love working with sellers like you because you understand you're not going to give it away. The property has a certain value and you deserve to sell it for that value. Well, let me share with you how I can buy it. And I can pay you full fair market value if you go ahead and let me pay over the next 10, 15, 20 years. That way you're not giving the property away.
Right.
So that's one type of seller.
Mm-hmm.
The second type of seller I love are tired landlords. Because tired landlords, you can have a heart-to-heart conversation and say, listen, let's just level. You loved the cash flow, but you hate the T's that are associated with the cash flow. What are the T's? Tenants, toilets, trash, termites, and turnover. They're usually older folks. They're in their late 60s, early 70s, mid 70s, maybe early 80s. They probably already had a conversation with their sons, and the sons already told them, I don't want your piece of crap rental. So there's already, but they love the cash flow. And the conversation that I have with them is, would you be open to a conversation that would allow you to keep the cash flow, but relieve yourself of all of the liabilities and pressures and responsibilities of actually owning the property?
Well, and that seller hates capital gains too.
Yeah.
So that seller hates capital gains as well. That tired landlord. Right. You know, you look at that $600 a month that I'm going to pay you versus the $1,200 that you've been making less the taxes. I mean, there is much less spread because obviously we've got to eat, but the capital gains piece is definitely an advantage for those sellers.
Right. And that was the exact thing that the last one we did, the seller said. He had already sold some properties and he was trying to, what am I going to do?
Oh, and he got hit with capital gains?
Yeah. He's like, what am I going to do with this cash? Right. So it made sense for him to do more of a seller finance. So, yeah. So I get that. So you're looking for someone that's going to be older, tired landlords who don't want to deal with all the things that come along with being a landlord, but still want the monthly coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Still want. And with them, what I do, they're going to want an interest. You know, with the previous sellers, kind of the pitch is you don't have to discount it. I offer no interest, no down payment, just full fair market value, equal monthly payments for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Okay. But with tired landlords, they're a little bit more sophisticated, but also they kind of understand that they do have to discount it a little bit. You know, there's that business understanding. So with them, usually the offer, it's about 80%, you know, of ARV minus repairs. And then I'll offer them, you know, a market interest, maybe 4%, 5%, 6%. And usually the way the conversation kind of goes is very similar to what you said. Okay, if I give you all this money, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to put it, you know, to work for you in some sort of investment, you know, situations? And if the answer is yes, it's like, well, you might not be aware of this, but I borrow houses. I borrow homes. I borrow money to buy homes. I borrow money to buy houses. So if you reinvest it with myself, currently I'm paying, and I fill in the blank, you know, 5% to our investors. And as a matter of fact, if we eliminate the whole paying you and that day reinvesting back us, and simply structure the investment into the property, you're going to be able to have a big capital gains advantage over it. Because if I do give you the cash, you technically do have to pay the capital gains on it. But if we structure it so that there really isn't any cash given to you and then you given to us, there's tax benefits for you. So with them, it's usually about, you know, and they understand they got to give a little bit of a discount because they bought it at a discount, you know, they bought it smart too.
So is there any kind of a sniff test as far as like whether or not something's a good owner finance deal? Is it $200 a month in cash flow? I know there's hidden expenses, you know, with your RMLO, your escrow accounts, whatnot. What is that magic number and how does that work?
In regards to what?
So if you're buying if a seller is financing a deal to you for X, you need to be able to produce how much a month in cash flow or how much in equity in order for it to make sense.
Gotcha. So to me, and this is just to me, every person has a different model, but to me, there's kind of two spectrums, you know, two ranges. Okay. On one side of the range is no equity and no interest. So I'll pay full fair market value if you simply let me pay you in equal monthly payments over the next 15 years. So no interest, no payments. I'm sorry, no interest and no equity given. The second is a cash offer. If you think about what a cash offer really is, it's no time and 50% equity. Because if you think about it, a cash offer really is a very teeny tiny, small, minuscule seller finance agreement. You're agreeing to pay in like 30 days. Right. That's kind of, you know, a seller finance offer, except it's teeny tiny. Yeah. So on one side is if you give me 15 years to pay, I'll give you all the full fair market value. I won't need any equity. You can keep it all. On the second, on the polar opposite of the equation is if you want all your money now and you're not going to give me any time to pay, then I need a 50% discount. Most deals will end up somewhere in the middle in an equitable fashion. Mm-hmm. So for example, if they say, well, I don't want to give you 15 years to pay, but I'll do 10 years. Okay, so we're going to amortize it to 30 years and I'll give you a 10-year balloon and I'm going to need a 5% discount. So equitable situation, kind of equitable situation. If they bring up the whole, well, what's the interest rate? How much interest rate am I going to be getting? I let them know that they can qualify, to get interest. I hadn't talked about it, but they can qualify to get interest. They're essentially going to agree to be the bank, which I'm happy to do that for them. However, if they're going to be the bank, the fair thing to do, and the word fair, is to treat me like a bank customer. Right now, banks are giving 30 years to repay, and they're charging 3% interest. Do those sound like fair terms to you? Maybe yes, maybe no. No, I don't want to give you 30 years. Okay, well then you're not wanting to be the bank, which is okay. Then you don't get the bells and whistles of the bank. What are you getting? You're getting full fair market value. But if you want the bells and whistles of a bank, which is totally cool, you've got to give me, that's the fair thing to do, the bells and whistles of being a bank customer.
Man, I love that. Yeah. That's awesome. That's phenomenal. I hadn't heard of it heard it explained that way. That's pretty great.
Yeah, because I think you were thinking mainly like, is it a $200 spread? Is it a $150 spread? Is it a $500 spread? Is there? Yeah.
Well, my average spread right now, it's like $950.
Yeah.
Across our portfolio. Now, mind you, we do have a couple of deals that, it's in the 700, 800, 900, 1,000. We have a couple of large parcels, where there's like a $5,000 spread, from the purchase and on the sale side. But yeah, I'm extremely aggressive. Most sellers don't understand how aggressive, because, so this is another component that I like to talk about, if I could.
Sure.
When you as a wholesaler have your cash buyer, cash offer hat on, there really is only one thing that you can negotiate, and that's price. And either you're going to come up or they're going to come down. That's it. There's nothing else that you can negotiate to make the deal work. But when you're dealing on terms, there's at least 7 things that you can negotiate on. You can negotiate, and price is just one of them. You can negotiate on price, length of time, also known as amortization, interest. I guess if you talk about interest structure, that's an 8th one, because it could be a fixed rate, it could be an arm rate, it could be reduced, it could be fluctuating. I mean, it could be all sorts of interest rates. The monthly payment, prepayment penalties, prepayment discounts.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. No one ever talks about that one.
You can negotiate prepayment discounts.
Yeah, we're usually thinking the seller is the opposite of that.
Yeah, usually they don't want. I've only thought penalty.
Yeah, they don't want you to pay them off. Yeah.
Yeah. I include the conversation of prepayment discounts. And by the way, Mr. Seller, I just want to let you know, if I come across, I don't know if I want to come across money, but if I come across money and I pay you off, at in 5 years or in 7 years, I want to know that you're going to give me a 10% discount. Is that okay? And what's also nice is a lot of times they say no, which is fine. I'll give it to them. I don't care. I'll negotiate later. But
that's the thing I like about it.
But then they feel like they won something already. No. I didn't give them any prepayment discounts. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the question.
We'll negotiate in 3 years.
So that's what I'm talking about right there is, I think a lot of people, like wholesalers, they get into the deal thinking, okay, the terms of this contract is going to be the same for the next 30 years. But what you're saying is that you go back and renegotiate the terms. People change. I guess their situation changes, and they may want their money today.
So let me tell you, this is like a super ninja thing that I only talk about in my course, but I'm happy to share it because it's phenomenal. All of my owner finance sellers, they get 2 things from me. They get a conversation in the beginning that I let them know, hey, if you haven't figured it out, I'm your money guy. Anytime that you need money in the next 10, 15, 20 years, or however long the relationship lasts, I'm your money guy. I'm going to let you right now. I'm expensive, but I'm quick. So anytime you guys need money, talk to me. So that's the first conversation. The second conversation is they get a phone call from me twice a year. Christmas time, we're going to start doing our phone calls. And the second time, right around their anniversary time. So the way the conversation kind of goes is, hey, I just want to let you know, I'm super happy with our relationship. I just want to, check up on you. Have you been getting your payments on time? Yes. Obviously, I know they have. Right. We set up a third-party note servicing company. Great. Awesome. I just want to let you know that if you have any needs for money, just go ahead and let me know. As a matter of fact, I kind of want to let you know that I came across a little bit of money I know you and I have a debt, and I know that we currently owe you, I don't know, $60,000 or whatever the unpaid principal balance is. It's not a lot of money. I did come across $5,000. And if you want it, I'm happy to give it to you. Just be aware that I'm going to ask for a reduction in debt. So if you want the money, I can give you the money right now. I came across a little bit of money, but I'm going to want a $10,000 discount on the debt. Or maybe I want a 2% reduction on the interest. Or maybe I want a prepayment discount included in the mortgage.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to extend the length of time. Maybe I want the money to be counted as prepayments, but I want double the payments. So if $5,000 is 5 months worth of payments, I want no payments for 10 months. So every 6 months is this beautiful conversation where how can I continue leveraging and improving my deal with the sellers? And I have a couple of sellers like, Dan, I don't want your money's expensive. I'll be back next year and see how things are.
What are some examples of renegotiations though? Have you ever, like, let's say we just took on a note for $300K, 15% down. So we're at 255. Could we go to him in 2 to 3 years and say, hey, would you take 150 for it? I mean, does that ever happen for you?
Of course.
Worst that could happen, I guess, huh?
I mean, they're going to say, yeah, the worst can happen. We're going to ask, but does it?
This is the beautiful part. When you are attacking a deal as a cash deal, you only get one chance to negotiate on one item.
Mm-hmm.
And it's over. Everyone gets paid and everyone walks home. But when you negotiate a seller finance transaction, you are giving yourself the opportunity to negotiate at least on 7 points in the beginning, and you give yourself the opportunity to renegotiate for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's phenomenal.
So that renegotiation, I mean, it is just mind-blowing. And yeah, I do get calls all the time because these people need money. Hey, Dan, I know you said to call me, you know, my car just broke. I need $1,000. No problem. I'm going to need a $2,000 discount.
Right.
They don't, it's the whole mostly American mentality of what can I get now? I don't care what it's going to cost me in the future.
Right. So you mentioned in the beginning that when you first got started, you had a mentor that said, go do this, and you went and did it. Right. And you just mentioned that you have a course. What's in this course? Because most of the people that are listening to this, they may be like, okay, this may be a little bit over my head. What do they get in a course that you can help them get started?
So the first thing I do want to talk about is before we're talking about, because there is a cost associated with it, but that's not what this conversation is about. I do have a free Facebook group. It's called Owner Finance Your Way to Freedom, one note at a time. That's the platform that I've made a personal commitment to share free of charge, our experience, our tools. Once per week, usually on Mondays at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time, I go there live. I answer the group's questions. We talk about deals and we talk about training. So if anyone is short on money or they're really starting out or do that, and it's completely free of charge. Now, if someone is a little bit more serious, there is a short training that I put together. It's 10 hours in length. The things that we go over, some of the syllabus, for example, how to buy with seller financing, how to negotiate zero down deals, how to do subject twos that pay you at closing, and why it's actually smart to stop chasing pre-foreclosures, the math associated with wealth building powerful notes, contracts to use, selling with owner financing, wraps and spreads, hypothecation, dual note origination, capital recycling, note servicing. That's Owner Finance Deep Dive. It's about 6 hours. And then the second course, it's 5 killer seller finance offers that we present to sellers. Each of them are going to keep you incredibly profitable. How to structure when they absolutely want or need a down payment. Sometimes that's a need. How you can structure it so that it's still zero money out of your pocket. How you can do a 12-month term to dramatically increase your wholesale profit. How to structure deals from the seller as large equity, but they still have a mortgage subject to. Learning the best structures for massive wealth term, long-term wealth. And then finally, which is super important, master the math. Loan amounts, interest, length of time, monthly payments, amortizations, things of that nature. That's about 4 hours. When I did these live, I did them in Houston and Dallas and in Austin. People pay thousands of dollars to be in that small group. But this live recording is available for less than $300 if someone is genuinely interested in improving, their situation. That's not what this platform is for, but the recordings are there for you to keep. And of course, whatever questions you have,
Mm-hmm.
post them on the group, and we'll go over them. But if anything, just join the group, man. I mean,
Yeah, no, I applaud you for that.
I
applaud you for that commitment. I've seen you Mondays at 5 and you're every week, hey, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys want to talk about? And it's early in the morning or Friday even. Then I'm seeing it. Maybe it's just popping up on my news feed at the time, but that's awesome. It's a big commitment from you. And it, you're plugging the Wholesale group, or not the Wholesale group, the Facebook group, right, which is free. So, I mean, that's pretty awesome. Yeah. We'll be getting the course. I think I want something condensed, consolidated, in the contracts and whatnot are in there as well. Question for you about seller financing. So we've come across a number of interested sellers that are interested in holding a note for us, but there's 40 to 50K in work. And when you put pencil to paper, it really doesn't make sense to put all that work into it. We might as well just buy it cash and from the bank. Let's wrap that note in finance rather than bringing 40, 50K in cash. How do you, where is that balance in what you bring to the table, cash versus, them financing?
Great question. I don't. And I'm serious. So when I buy properties, mm-hmm, I owner finance, as is, where is, how is. I do zero rehab on the property. I mow the grass, I trim the trees, I take the dead cats out, and I bomb it with Fabuloso.
So, man, if you had my mic, you would just drop it right now.
That's what I do.
It.
Yeah, well, that sucks because I'm thinking of all the opportunities that we've missed because we couldn't come to an agreement on the cash price when we had agreement on terms. It just didn't make sense.
I don't do anything to the properties.
So the back end.
What's that?
So your back end buyers, you have a pretty, what people are buying and what they're feeling, what they'll fix and what Absolutely. They'll pay for it. So yeah. That's what you have to know that in order to buy.
Remember when you negotiate, it's not just half off of ARV. Mm-hmm. It's half of fair market value. And the way you arrive at that is ARV, 50% of ARV minus the repairs.
Right.
So the price that I'm negotiating, is there, or even if I pay full fair market value, it's minus repairs. Mm-hmm. So the repair cushions are in it. Now, I don't know, you guys are in Houston, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure there's going to be people from all over the country, maybe even all over the world listening to this podcast eventually. So again, I can only speak of my market, which is primarily San Antonio, where we buy. We do fund in Austin, DFW, Houston and San Antonio, but on our personal portfolio, when we buy, it's San Antonio. So full disclosure, I'm only talking about our market. But what I have seen is that everyone wants a deal. That's really what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. So the price that I offer it in their minds. So I want to say this right. When I negotiate it with a repair budget of like Home Depot contractors, mm-hmm. Okay. Johnny Big Truck, general contractors. So let's say that the rehab budget, like you said, is $40,000. Well, when I'm going to owner finance it, I'm going to owner finance it at ARV minus repairs, the $40,000. But what I observe is that most people, they go into a house and they never in their wildest dreams imagine it's going to take $40,000. In their minds, they're going to be like, I can do this because they're calculating their work. I mean, not my fault, but they're calculating their labor and their homies' labor and a six-pack of beer and doing it on the weekend and looking for cheap material. They might only budget in their mind $20,000. So in their mind, they're already getting, in their underwriting, in their mind, they're already getting a discount. And ultimately, because of San Antonio's high appreciation rate, which I know y'all's are worse, but we've had some pretty high appreciation rate lately, people are looking for discounts. Mm-hmm. So we don't fix. I do not lift a hammer, nor do I hire anybody to lift a hammer. We trim, we mow the grass, we trim the trees, we take the dead cats out, and we bomb it with Fabuloso.
What are your thoughts on?
He says, bro, when we did the bugs, the end of last year, and he's like, you have an account for Fabuloso. Was it really $15,000? Because we buy in bulk. We buy in bulk.
It's a lot of Fabuloso.
Like, yes, it is.
Yeah, and I'm like, have you gone to our houses? He's like, no. I'm like, they smell like Fabuloso.
You don't touch them at all. What are your thoughts on the big four? I mean, foundation, roof, plumbing, AC. Do you
disclose?
Uh-huh.
Disclose. But no, I don't do any.
So what I
not-
gather is what you've learned is that people value home ownership more than anything.
Yes.
So, and that's what we have the mindset. A lot of wholesalers like, well, people are going to want to fix it up, or they're going to want us to fix it up. And then, but that's not the people that you are selling to value home ownership, and that they will fix it themselves and probably take more pride in it because they are doing it themselves, and versus just someone that's just buying a house that's already fixed up.
Yeah, yeah. And when you're fixed, and I don't knock rehabbers. I mean, I'm blown. I wish I could rehab. I mean, I've seen some of the work, that they put out, and it's like, oh my God, I want to live in your home. It's pretty cool work. But the problem that I see when you rehab is that now you've got a prime product, which is good, but you're also dealing with prime buyers that already been approved for the loan, and they're competing, and you're competing with 10,000 other homes for sale in the market. The value that I bring is that it's going to be discounted, and two, I'm going to carry the financing on it. And I think in San Antonio, and again, this is San Antonio, a lot of the locals, they're looking for cheap homes now. It's the parents and the grandparents they're trying to urge their kids to buy fixer-uppers because they bought their home for $60,000 40 years ago, and now they know that for the same home they're going to have to pay $200,000. And they're like, "Mijo, don't pay it. Buy a fixer-upper. We help you." And the bank won't finance it, but I will.
Right. So you're actually, I thought you were in the RGV as well. You're just strictly in San Antonio?
Yeah. Even for funding, San Antonio, Austin, DFW, and Houston, we haven't maxed out, our options. And personally, for purchasing our own portfolio, and now we're in a half of San Antonio. I want to have a drivable distance to our assets.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with the valley. It's just it's a 5-hour drive for me. So it's an interesting market. I think you need to be a little bit of a local there to understand it, and that's not me.
Yeah. Fair enough. So what kind of volume are you guys doing? I know you said 50% is the find the buyer and then they go pick their own asset. Tremendous amount of
we're raising, we're raising anywhere between 900,000 and 1.2 million every 28 days, which translates to about maybe 3, 4, or 5 homes that we're funding. That's one side of the business, about 40% of the business. We're buying on cash about maybe 1 or 2 deals a month, and we're buying on terms about 3 to 4 deals a month. So it's small. I mean, I think it's small. It's manageable. We can still handle it, very much in house. Coronavirus has actually kind of helped us because one of the things that I always struggled with is do I expand and have 4,000 square feet of office space, and therefore I'm kind of tied to that office space until it runs on its own, or do I value my freedom and waking up late or early, or going to jog? Or we've been getting into bicycling. That's pretty exciting. We so a couple buddies of mine, 2 weeks ago, we did, I don't know if you know San Antonio, but it's got an inner loop, which is 410, and then there's an outer loop, 1604. We did 1604 north to 1604 south, 37 miles in about 3 hours, which was pretty cool. So anyways, we get to do those things, during the day. And for us, coronavirus has been a blessing. Volume has gone up, but it also has allowed me to build an office structure where everyone is kind of remote, and we meet, via Zoom. So that's kind of what we're doing.
I think Corona's pushed a lot of us into new hobbies and habits and whatnot. I picked up biking as well. But the
are you on Strava?
What's that?
Are you on Strava?
No, I do. I'm all off-road.
Oh, okay. There's an app called Strava.
Yeah, I've seen it, but no, I'm not on there.
Oh, okay.
No.
I
am gonna get into road cycling soon. But
totally off topic.
what does the marketing look like? Not marketing for buyers, but marketing for actually distressed assets or potential sellers. What does that look like?
Our marketing is not different than a whole lot of people. I've got 2 cold callers in Honduras. And then I've got 2 acquisition people here. We buy lists. We're averaging anywhere between 7 to 10,000 lists every 30 days.
Okay.
They go ahead and cold call them after it kind of gets reduced. We'll do text. We'll put them on a cycle of text messaging, and then we'll put them on ringless voicemail. And we hit them pretty hard for about maybe 3 months. And after that, we'll just put them on drip marketing once a month until they buy or die.
Is the messaging any different?
What's that?
Is the messaging any different?
Is the message? No, messaging is pretty simple. We're looking to buy properties in your neighborhood. If you happen to know somebody, call this number. So are you familiar with livecom.com?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not.
Mitch Stevens?
Yeah, Mitch Stevens. Yeah, absolutely. I wish he'd pay me money because I super recommend him. But I guess his friendship is enough. Yeah, so the text messages is, call this number to learn about our process. And it's a live com number. So that helps us with the marketing loop. And then that kind of builds a list. But they can't call back whenever we do the text messaging. If they want more information, it's there. Whenever we do the ringless voicemail, we just let them know, hey, if you think we're of no value to you, no need to call back.
Right.
If you feel that you know somebody. We also don't do, whenever it's the cold marketing, like the ringless voicemail and the text, it's not, do you want to sell your house? It's more like, hey, we understand you live in San Antonio, you have property there. We're curious if maybe you know somebody who may be looking to sell a property in San Antonio. That way, and it's funny because we've actually gotten calls back that said, hey, yeah, my cousin, is looking to sell, or my next door neighbor, or there's something on the street. And I'm like, wait a minute, if you're calling me back, that's because you have a house. But it's okay, you don't want to talk about your house. All right, I'll pick your other house.
I'm asking for a friend.
Right.
Yeah, asking for a friend. So we've gotten quite a few calls, just making them real nonchalant. Hey, we know you live in San Antonio. Our records indicate that you live in San Antonio. We're actively buying in that area.
Mm-hmm.
We'd love to know if maybe you can connect us with somebody, maybe in your neighborhood, who is looking to sell a property. If you want to learn about our process, go ahead and call this number. It's free 24/7 automated number.
Yeah. And what I like about that is that you don't have to change anything. So for the wholesalers that are out there marketing, it's just more so about the seller and what the seller wants, right? At the end of the day, it's going to determine how you make that offer. So I like that. All right.
And I think it's a little just personal preference. They don't know me or who I am. So it's like there's a veil of secrecy behind me. And for me to kind of attack, I want to buy your property. That seems a little invasive. I think that's maybe involved in what triggers people's negative emotions.
Right.
So it's just a real friendly, hey, let me introduce myself. We're buying houses anywhere in San Antonio. Public records show that you live in San Antonio. Do you happen to know anybody in San Antonio? Right. So it's a little, I don't know. For us, the response, we don't get all those FU responses as often as other folks do. We still get them, but
there's some people that just they get incredibly aggravated by mail and calls and texts.
I had this one guy that said, so what, are you calling every person in San Antonio? I'm like, man, I wish I had the budget for that. No, but we're doing one zip code at a time.
I wish. So Dan, back in, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's imagine yourself back in 2015 when you get started. What advice would you give yourself?
That's a really good question. And going back to the first deal that I did, I would congratulate myself and I would commend myself for taking massive, even if imperfect action. I think when we ponder on that question, many of us, we make the mistake of thinking, what would we do differently? Mm-hmm. But I do like to focus on what I did right, because doing that right over and over again, I know I have full faith that it'll take me to the next level. Now, what would I maybe do a little bit different? I now realize that at the time I was incredibly focused out of fears, I was incredibly focused in only doing home runs. And, to my credit, the first year, I only did 3 deals, but they were pretty phenomenal deals. All 3 of them were close to $100,000 deals. Nice. But now I realize that I could have maybe tripled the number of deals at half the profit, and therefore I would have ended up with 50% more money.
Right.
You know? So maybe not so focused on only looking for home runs. You know, sometimes you just got to hit the ball and be okay with making it to first base. And as long as you continue focus on doing more deals, that would be something that I would definitely recommend. There's only so much, or that I would tell myself, there's only so much you can learn from one deal.
Right.
But you can learn a lot by doing 100 deals. There is some, you know, experience, knowledge associated with them. And there is value in losing money. I mean, I hate to say it, I don't like it, but you know, there is some value to that. So what I would say is don't be afraid of just hitting the ball, even if you're not 1,000% sure that it's going to be a home run. You know, just whack that ball more often.
That's great advice. That's great advice to give yourself. And obviously you've shifted it and look where you're at now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now I'm hitting that ball. It's like, screw it. I don't care. Do it.
Sacrifice bunt.
Yeah. And so, you know, Dan, first of all, we want to thank you for coming on and dropping these knowledge bombs on our audience. And, you know, for our wholesalers at the end of the day, and of course we're going to get involved so we can learn, right? And so that we don't just throw away leads that could have been something else. And, you know, sometimes you look at a $10,000 and $15,000 assignment fee and you may be thinking, woohoo, but then you can do some numbers and realize, well, you just threw away $100,000 by going for that 10 to 15 today. I
can't imagine how much money we've actually left on the table by not being open to seller financing.
Right. So if you're just getting started, right, a great time to get started in seller financing is right now, right? Because you don't have to have that conversation that we're having right now that you missed the deal and you know how much money did you pass up? You're not there yet, so this would be a good time to get started. So how do our audience reach out to you to learn more?
You're more than welcome to reach out on Facebook, Dancito. That's my personal social media account. The Facebook group, which I welcome you to join, is Owner Finance Your Way to Freedom, one note at a time. It's got my ugly face up front, but you can see it. There are 3 questions that you do have to answer. If you don't answer them, you will not be admitted. Currently, there's about 1,500 requests that did not answer the questions. So if you're not committed, I'm not gonna let you in. So reach out, and if you do want information on the training, just hit me up in the group. I want you to join the group first. And FYI, for anyone who has any questions, there is nothing for sale, not even t-shirts beyond that. It's just kind of a starter training if you want it, you know. Okay. So hit me up on social media.
Perfect.
That's cool.
And again, we appreciate you for coming on. And for our audience, don't forget, if you like what you heard today, don't forget to smash the like button and hit subscribe and leave us a review. All right. We'd like to hear, you know, what your thoughts are about the show. And if you want to reach out to us, go to Wholesale Nation Facebook group. That's a good way to get in touch with us. If you have any questions, we want to see more interaction in there. So join it. And of course, don't forget to interact. And if you want to reach Andy, hit him up on Facebook. You can get me at Andre King on IG. With that said, guys, that's a wrap. Y'all come back now. You hear?